It's the 5th of July, and a special occasion for the council and citizens of Falkirk district as they await the arrival of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth, who is to open the Mariner Centre. The £3 million ultra-modern centre is the latest acquisition to a wide range of leisure and recreation facilities which abound throughout the district, and is the culmination of careful planning and perseverance by councillors and officials, who must feel a particular sense of achievement, inasmuch as the centre is the first of its kind in central Scotland. Financial assistance from the European Regional Development Fund has been one of the enabling factors which have seen the realisation of a project which will provide opportunity for healthy exercise and sport, not only for the residents of Falkirk district, but also those of central Scotland and visitors from further afield. Most appropriately, music for the occasion is provided by the Argyll and Southern Highlanders, the local regiment with strong ties to the district and Stirlingshire. The band are under the directorship of bandmaster W.D. Kevin Lamb, who will be introduced to Her Majesty on her way into the new centre. And so, as they await the arrival of the royal visitor, for this most important event, crowds are assembling along the route through Falkirk and gathering round the centre itself. The colour party for the day is provided by members of the Falkirk unit of Sea Cadet Corps, who, in keeping with protocol, will hoist the royal standard on Her Majesty's arrival. And here comes the royal entourage through the mist of a rather rain-swept Camlin Main Street. And on arrival, the Lord Lieutenant will move into position to formally salute and greet Her Majesty. The royal car. And moving to greet the Queen, the Lord Lieutenant, Colonel James Stirling. Having arrived at the scene of the opening, Her Majesty will be introduced to the Lord Lieutenant's protocol party, which comprises his wife, Mrs. Stirling, the Sheriff Principal, Mr. Robert Taylor and Mrs. Taylor, the convener of Central Regional Council, Mr. James Anderson and Mrs. Anderson, the Chief Executive of Central Regional Council, Mr. Eric Geddes and Mrs. Geddes, the Member of Parliament for Falkirk East, Mr. Harry Ewing and Mrs. Ewing, and the Chief Constable of Central Scotland Police, Mr. Ian Oliver and Mrs. Oliver. And now a brief chat with Bandmaster Lamb of the Argylls, no doubt comparing today's weather with that of yesterday, when the band entertained hundreds of guests at the Royal Garden Party at Holyrood Palace. And into the Mariner Centre itself, where the Lord Lieutenant will introduce Provost John Docherty, who in turn will introduce his party comprising his daughter Mandy, the Chief Executive Officer of Falkirk District, James Peyton and Mrs. Peyton, the Deputy Provost and his wife, Mr. and Mrs. Charles Mackay, Councillor James Marshall, Chairman of the General Purposes Committee, and Mrs. Marshall. The Queen now moves on to sign the visitors' book as a memento of this great occasion for Falkirk. And she will also sign a portrait which will have an honoured place in the municipal buildings, the administrative headquarters of the district council. And now Provost Docherty's formal welcome.
Your Majesty, Secretary of State, Lord Lieutenant, Sheriff Principal, Members of Parliament, Councillor, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. As Provost of Falkirk District Council, it always gives me and my fellow councillors immense pleasure and satisfaction to see a new facility being provided in the Falkirk District. And in the case of the Mariner Centre, there is a particular sense of achievement, because this new recreational facility with its accent on leisure is the first of its kind in central Scotland. It is a notable achievement indeed after the difficulties in obtaining approvals for the financing of the development to find oneself now in a position to welcome everyone to the formal opening of the centre by Her Majesty the Queen, an event which in itself shows the prestigious nature of the development and the financial assistance to be received from the European Regional Development Fund, and that received from the Scottish Development Agency is gratefully acknowledged by the Council. The facilities at the centre will serve the needs not only of the residents of Falkirk District, but also those of the central region of Scotland and the tourists who come from further afield. The people of Falkirk District can be justifiably proud of this family leisure complex, which provides the opportunities of healthy activity, exercise and sport for the young and the young at heart. It is a realisation of a dream and a testament to the determination and the perseverance of the Council, and a credit to all those involved in this project. I would extend to you, Your Majesty, the sincere thanks of my Council and the people of Falkirk District for agreeing to visit us today. You are of course no stranger to Falkirk, having visited the town in 1946 as Princess Elizabeth, and also in July 1955, and are always most welcome. And thus gives me great pleasure to invite you, Your Majesty, to declare the centre open.
And Her Majesty moves towards the plaque. And in turn will be presented with a gift from Provost Docherty.
I'd like to accept the gift, and this is of course a brochure.
A book on the history of Falkirk by Lewis Lawson, specially leather-bound by local bookbinders Dunn & Wilson. And a bouquet, presented by Angela Rafferty, the local Mariners' Day Gala Queen. Now the Provost conducts the Queen to the second party to be introduced. The Chairman of the Leisure and Recreation Committee, Councillor Alex Fowler and Mrs. Fowler. The Director of Architectural Services of Falkirk District Council, Mr. Dennis Russell and Mrs. Russell. The Director of Amenity and Recreation of Falkirk District Council, Mr. David Mould and Miss Fiona Mould. And the Chairman of the Policy and Resources Committee, John Jenkinson and Mrs. Jenkinson. All of whom are officials and councillors directly involved in the Mariner Centre. Accompanied by the Chairman of the Leisure and Recreation Committee, the Provost will conduct the Queen to the poolside to see there some of the displays and activities involving local school children and handicapped people. Majesty will be introduced to two gentlemen who are responsible for work with the handicapped. Mr. Lewis Thompson of Dawson Park School and Mr. Eddie Maguire of Elgin Park Centre. Water safety is a most important facet of modern-day leisure and recreation, and Her Majesty will be chatting to three people actively concerned. Mrs. Pearl Meldrum, Mr. Alex Ferguson of Camlin High School, and Mrs. Elizabeth White of Falkirk High School. Having viewed an exhibition in the lounge area, the Queen has now found her way to the Games Hall of the Centre, there to meet representatives of various organisations and invited guests of youth clubs, of user organisations, senior citizens clubs, and shortly to view a gymnastics display. Senior citizens, of course, are well represented here, as are the various members of young people's organisations, who after all will be amongst the main users of these splendid facilities. A chat with the Girl Guides, who this year celebrate their 75th anniversary of guiding. And a few words for representatives of Falkirk District's Children's and Youth Theatres, two well-known organisations in the district. Moving on now through the various organisations to a display by gymnasts from Grangemouth Boys and Grangemouth Girls Gymnastics Clubs. Now the Queen chats to the leader of the group, Mr. Robert Callahan. And surely a day to remember for these youngsters of the Grangemouth groups as they perform for their royal visitor. And a red rose for a royal lady. And now, on through the ranks of the invited guests from various community organisations, an introduction and chant to Mr. Brian Fairgrieve, a Vice Lieutenant of the County and local Scout Commissioner, through the senior citizens' organisations. And from the Games Hall, the Queen, conducted by the Provost, will make her way outside for a royal walkabout. And having waited patiently in the steady downpour for the last hour or so, the crowds, as you can see, are completely undeterred by the conditions and eagerly await the experience of a lifetime, that of meeting their sovereign at close range. When Her Majesty emerges from the Mariner Centre, she'll be introduced to the other band on royal duty today, under Pipe Major Mr. George Straighton, himself an ex-Argyll, the Camlin Pipe Band. Radiant as ever, Her Majesty chats with some of the folk who have come from all parts of the district for this great occasion for Falkirk. And over to the Camlin Pipe Band. The Queen will now formally plant a tree, which has been specially placed to commemorate International Youth Year. Her Majesty will be introduced to Mr. Stephen Ferguson and Mr. Kenneth MacLean of the International Youth Year Scottish Committee, Mrs. H. Matheson, the County Commissioner for Guides, and Mrs. R. MacDonald, Divisional Commissioner for Guides. On royal duty is the Lord Lieutenant's Cadet, Cadet Sergeant W. Maguire of the Denny Army Cadet Force, who hands the Queen the silver spade for the planting ceremony. A final short walkabout, and almost time for Her Majesty to take her leave of Falkirk, as a memorable event in the district's history is brought to conclusion.
A word of thanks to Provost Doherty and the Lord Lieutenant, and it's farewell to Falkirk from the Royal Visitor.
The Mariner Centre is open, and added to the existing Grangemouth Sports Complex and Stadium, will extend the scope of leisure activities for all. The plaque in the centre and the tree will be a lasting memento of this day, July the 5th, 1985, the royal opening of the Mariner Centre, Falkirk.